This conference will now be recorded.
This is WES01's 2019 facility plan with the State Construction Department, and we'll introduce ourselves first.
Good morning, guys. Brandon Finney with the Wyoming State Construction Department. My role at the team is to identify any capital construction needs through the facility planning process, then work with the school district. We develop budgets, and then our team presents those to various legislative bodies in anticipation for an appropriation.
And can you wave, just wave, so they can at least see your hand? There you go.
Good morning, guys. My name is Raj Dhami. I'm the accounting analyst, AIM assistant. I basically provide these guys with information from the AIM database.
I think we're going to start nicknaming you Junior.
That's good.
Amber Leach with State Construction, and I'm Policy Planning Coordinator. And my role during this process is to work with the district on the documentation for today's facility plan.
Troy Decker Planning, my responsibility is to make sure we abide by all state statutes, rules, and regs in the facility planning process to capture accurate data so that we update our database and can get accurate reports to the commission and the select committee. And then I'm also part of the budget team that helps make recommendations to our commission.
Good morning, I'm Paul Severson. I'm Design and Construction Administrator, which is a long way of saying I offer leadership, coordination, and calibration amongst the project managers so that we're able to provide as consistent a service to all districts across the state.
Morning, this is Bob Herzog. I'm the Regional Project Manager for the Northeast and Project Manager for the Western One, and I take care of all of the projects that are going on, security projects, and any kind of major maintenance projects go on in the district.
Okay, I'm Brad LaCroix. I'm the Superintendent of Schools in Weston 1.
Greg Gregory, Facilities Director.
Deb Silty, Business Manager.
Okay, well, welcome this morning. I'm going to go ahead and turn off our webcam. I just wanted to let you see our smiling faces today. We sometimes have some streaming difficulties. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and proceed. So a couple things. The facility plan process has improved dramatically from about 10 years that it started ago. We've made it very visual. And so periodically, not very often, but every once in a while, we do have the governor's office ask for a specific facility plan. We do have individual legislators periodically ask for facility plans. The great thing about this also is that school districts have turnover. And so sometimes we have turnover, the business manager, superintendent, and facilities director, all three change in one single year. But at any rate, the nice thing about these is that we have a continuum of information, consistency in reporting, and information that can really help new personnel in districts know the history of their district and what's been asked for and looked at and considered and contemplated in the past, and how they can move forward into the future. With that, then, we're going to go ahead and start moving forward with this. Amber's main job has been to help districts prepare for these so that when we have 6 of us on this side and 3 of you, a total of 9 of us, we can kind of get to the things we really need to talk about. Some of this is house cleaning. And so I'm going to go kind of quickly through the first part because that's why Amber meets with you and meets multiple times. So that we make sure the database is up to date and we don't have to go in and spend 30 minutes with 9 people trying to correct a building name or something like that. We do have visuals up here of Newcastle Elementary School and then your other schools and your aquatic center and your administration center as well building. But at any rate, you guys have reviewed the acreages and verified those. We appreciate that because that does have an impact on your groundskeeper allowances. And you guys probably know, obviously, state agencies share information with one another and data. A lot of our information does flow over to WDE, and they use that as authoritative data to make your block grant payments, as well as we get information, ADM and enrollment. We get that back from them, and that produces major maintenance payments and also calculations with regard to capacity. So thank you for doing that. So I just said here, by the way, when you guys get done with preparing and all the notes, I preload some comments here, but at any point, staff or district, if you want to change something or add something, I can certainly do that in the SFD notes. I just said right now our AIM database is up to date for this section for acreages. Property profiles, you guys have reviewed property profiles and verify their accuracy. These do impact, allowable square footage does impact your major maintenance payments, which is really important, and your WDE operations and maintenance payments as well. You don't have any building leases, so we're good there. You've reviewed enhancements. These are important because we have to report these to the select committee on school facilities, but now also we're required to report these to the joint education committee. So, and this is one thing that we review each and every year and try to keep it up to date. We're probably going to take one more run, Joint Education Committee. Joint Education Committee is going to be receiving this as well. It's kind of interesting. Brandon's looking up here. You can't see him pointing, but he's like, well, district resources. Sometimes when we first, and I don't know, that was back when Teresa Kunkel was Chief Operations Officer of this organization, but they had it on basically enhancements on a spreadsheet or multiple spreadsheets, and we brought those into a single spreadsheet. I don't know if some of those enhancements came over from the '97 era when WDE was doing all that work, had the first initial responsibility for pipeline schools and stuff. But at any rate, we tried to obtain and get as much information, brought it into the database, working with JJ, and then to the best of our ability, we tried to identify sources and this says district resources. And the fact is, and Deb, you could probably verify this. I don't know how long you've been there, but you know, your software systems have changed and the way you do business, and so it was difficult for districts to come up with solid categories sometimes of where money came from, and let alone how much for enhancements. So we just had district resources as a general statement there, Brandon, because we had no other way to identify something more specific than that.
Oh, I understand. Hey, Deb, this is Brandon. I have a question. So if on that first line item where it says May 19, 2009, if we were to ask you how much was out of the district resources and how much was out of the 10% major maintenance, would you be willing, or would you be able to get that data?
I should be able to.
Okay. I was just wondering, because when we start this process, just thinking about it.
Yeah.
How hard it'll be for districts, and like you said, some of them are new, different software, different people.
Oh my.
So.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then we've also learned over the last few years that you have obviously some resources that are available to spend on buildings and some that are not. We don't in particular get into that, but we are being asked exactly what resources you are using. So in the future, we'd probably like a little better description than district resources as to what your funding source is, because we are being asked, where do you get your funds? Yeah. And we don't know, and in truth, it's not our business, other than the fact that our legislators expect us to know.
Yeah.
Who's making the request for that information?
The legislature in House Bill 1 states that we have to provide a report on that to Joint Education and Joint Appropriations by September 1st to them. So we'll have to go and present it. So the legislature. But now we got to figure out how to get it, make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, well, you know, we've tracked it, we review it every year, and it's probably, but we're going to go back to districts and ask one more back.
Troy?
Yep.
We may need to back up here just a little bit, back to property profiles.
Okay.
Okay, you guys are showing Newcastle Middle School Storage 1, 2, 3, and 4 as being active. Those buildings were demoed 2 years ago, probably.
Did we ever follow up with a name update form for us to know that?
Well, I thought we did.
Okay, so I think we'll have you do, Greg, why don't you submit does each of those individual forms?
Individually,
Yeah.
because we'll submit it and tack that onto the documentation for each profile, and then we will show them as demolished or disposed of, however that is.
Okay.
That will go to Janet Garrison. She's the person that will update those. Okay?
Her contact information's right at the top of the AIM dashboard, so you can find her right there.
And it's in that form as well. And Deb, if you can't find that form, let me know and I'll get you the link.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, June 16.
Okay, good catch. Thanks for catching that, Greg.
You bet.
How much are you, when you guys prepare these, Deb versus Greg versus Brad, what's your, and I'm just kind of curious maybe for just our curiosity and stuff, are all three of you working on these facility plans prior to this meeting, or Deb,
Yeah.
or yourself, or?
Yeah, all three of us have kind of pieces of it.
Okay, well, I appreciate, the more eyes, the better, so thank you for catching that. All right, I think we're done with that then. So district appropriations, you don't have any, so we don't have to worry about return any monies. And Bob, security.
All right. I have a little bit of some background information here just to go through real quick with you. The original funding was from the 2014 House Enrolled Act number 0056, House Bill 0042, was for $9 million. Funding of projects defined was under the 2015 Senate Enrolled Act number 0089, Senate File 0057. The current budget, we just had this through the latest legislative session. I can read this. For school safety and security projects, in addition to the funds reappropriated under subsection G of this section, up to $4,950,000 was appropriated. Funds appropriated under this paragraph and reappropriated under this subsection G of this section shall only be expended on projects approved by the School Facilities Commission. The Commission shall only approve security projects pursuant to a Commission-established process that ensures that funds distributed under this paragraph maximize improvements to student and staff safety. The Commission shall consult with school districts to facilitate, to the extent efficient and practical, consolidated procurement of the school safety and security projects among school districts. The Commission shall only allow expenditures for priorities 1 through 6, 8, and 11 as submitted in the 2019 supplemental.
But that was
budget.
that was vetoed.
That was vetoed. So basically what we got is the 4.95, 950 million that was applied. And I guess that goes for the 20 now, right?
Yeah, well, no. Basically, we have to go to the commission in May and get their input, since the legislation basically says that the commission is to identify how those funds are to be expended. We've had some early discussions with them. The concept may be, and again I add may be, that we will be able to expend of the priorities you see on the screen there on all 20. But it also indicates that they should be the highest priorities first. So it's basically the lower the number, you should take care of those first before you go down to the lower numbers. We have not established a process with the commission yet. We will start that in May. We would be in hopes that we could conclude that in June. So there will be a bit of a lag based on the commission developing a methodology for us to be able to identify where and how you will be able to spend your share of that $4.9 million. Like I said,
Now, my understanding is at the end of our last meeting down in Casper, because I think the question was pretty much directly asked if this is open to all 20 and one. And from what I understand, the answer was yes, it's open to all 20. And as of immediately, it's available.
The funds have been transferred to School Facilities Division. We do not have a method for identifying the acceptable priorities. They did not accept yet any proposal on how to identify those priorities. It was discussed, but they have not given us a method to do it yet. And that's what we'll be talking about with them in May to confirm what it is they want to do. We will be bringing forward some ideas to them, but they still ultimately need to make the decision.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I know not only myself, but there was a few others that was under the understanding that that all been taken care of per the question that was brought up, and it was towards the end of the meeting when we was in Casper, I know.
Yeah, no, and they've started to discuss it, but also based on the legislation's request that the highest priorities be addressed first, we don't know yet whether or not it will be that you'll be able to pick anything of the 20. You may still have to start at the lowest numbers and work up. Again, we don't have direction on it yet, so I can't even tell you.
Greg, go to Buffalo in May, and then you can be part of it and add some comment and stuff. And
yeah, because
well, yeah, I was planning on being there, but like I said, I guess I'm going to say I misunderstood what was said along with several other people, but
yeah.
But now, as far as our security money, and some of you in the room should be aware of this, that we've kind of swept that all into one pile so we can work on our electronic locks around the district. Hopefully that hasn't changed.
No, that has not changed. The processes, until we get a new process from the commission, we're proceeding with the previously appropriated money in the same method that we've been dealing with it until such time they give us a new methodology. So,
okay,
we keep moving forward until such time we've got something else to work with.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you jumping in there. Paul's had a little bit more direct contact on some of these things than I have. So we'll just keep going the way we're going. Just want to wrap this up real quick. Security conferences. We've had conferences in October 2017, March of 2018, October of 2018, and for this year we have not established a date or a location.
There's a tentative date of September 30 in Laramie at the Gateway Center at the university. We've got some meetings in 2 weeks to meet with WDE. It's being paired together with the Superintendent of Schools S5S conference. And it would appear that the SFD portion would be a half day on September 30th, and the 1st and 2nd of October would be the WDE S5S portion of the conference. Again, we don't have it completely nailed down. I know we don't have the spaces reserved yet, so we're working on it, but it would appear at this point that the discussion has stayed on those dates now for about a month. So I'm thinking we're probably pretty solid on that, but we'll let you know as soon as we get it completely worked out.
Okay.
And this time in the past, we've brought in experts, essentially national experts, and this time we're going to focus on districts and what they are doing, and letting them identify to their peers, to the other districts, what projects they've got going on, some of the successes, if anybody's had any challenges, be able to discuss those. So it's going to be more of an internalized event this time, that we'll focus on what districts are doing, what they've done, what has worked, what hasn't worked, rather than bringing in national experts. We're going to be experts ourselves this time.
Okay, Bob, anything else?
Nope, I think that wraps it up pretty good.
Great. All righty. So down to enrollment, you guys are, the nearest one you have is Newcastle Middle School. Still have about, give or take, 90 seats there, but everything else has plenty of capacity according to the SFC calculation methodology. Looking at your actual enrollments themselves, I try not to take for granted anybody's knowledge of this. We do receive from WDE enrollment K through 12. The methodology does go back 10 years of trailing data and then projects out 10 years. The only time these projections are ever used is when a capital remedy is being considered for recommendation to the commission. The farther out, obviously, you get from the actual data from WDE here, the farther out you go this way, obviously the more theoretical it becomes. And of course, it's based on mathematical computations and trends in the past. But how this works is kindergarten, like 2008 kindergarten advanced to 2009 first grade, 2009 kindergarten, 2010 first grade. You take 10 years of that trailing data, you average it, and your district from kindergarten to first grade has a 97% survival rate, statistical survival rate. So 97% of those students on average over the last 10 years advanced to first grade. Brad, do you guys have like maybe a kindergarten where portion of that where the students aren't developmentally ready, so perhaps they don't advance and wait one more year?
Brad had to step out, take a phone call.
Okay. Can you answer that, Greg?
No.
Okay.
Maybe
No
yeah,
problem. No problem. But you guys are picking up students in second and third. You kind of lose fourth. You pick up a bunch in fifth, lose just a few. And then by the time you get to eighth grade, you guys are starting to pick up students there. Are you guys getting students from anywhere else toward junior high school, from any other school districts once they're through elementary, or do you know that?
I think we are.
Yeah, we do occasionally, Troy, and I know I do hear our elementary principal talking about the growth of kindergarten and their whole school. Of course, they're at K through 5, but I know she reported that we was up quite a few students.
Okay.
Brad's back in the room now. He probably can answer a question.
Oh, Brad, we were just looking at your enrollment projections, and you from kindergarten to first grade, you have a 97% survival rate of students going from kindergarten to first. We were just curious if you had some kind of a kindergarten program where students perhaps are not developmentally ready, so you might hold them back for one more year before advancing them.
Now, they only do that in Texas when you try to build a football team.
Yeah. Get them as close. Yeah, one more year of maturation, man. That's important. How funny. And then looking down, your sophomore year, you lose some. Junior year, you lose some, and then you pick some back up, I assume, to graduate. So you guys are pretty well steady Eddie. I know back in 2009, 10, you had some higher numbers, 11. But for the most part, you guys are 64. And so your community, for the most part, based on birth rates probably, is pretty consistent with regard to kindergarten coming in. So with that, I guess not much more to say. Thankfully, you guys have 792 as of October 1. I know you're different today, but we recognize that each of those students is approximately $15,000 of revenue to you guys, and it makes even 2 or 3 or 4 students can make a huge impact on the resources you can provide for educating students. All righty. So statewide, we always have a statewide capacity list, and according to commission rules and regs, there's a high capacity category, and anybody above 100%. I think last year we only have one, I believe, and that was Lincoln 2, Afton Osmond school district that actually had any grade configuration above 100%. This year you have a bunch more. And Greg is familiar with this. What happened was the commission made a decision to do a restricted capacity up to 25 students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Had a bunch of pushback from districts, changed that back to 16 as restricted capacity. It's not mandated by state statute that they match the funding model for WDE, but that's what they chose to do. So what happened was there was a bunch of elementaries that pushed up into this high category, and now are over capacity. Now, Natrona is not really. They say they're 300 seats short, and they are in the school buildings they have, but they also mothballed 4 elementaries for a total of 900 seats available. So I'm sure they won't be receiving money for elementary numbers. They've just chosen to educate students in less buildings for operations reasons. Anyway, that's pretty well just the buildings that are on the capacity list. I did say that you guys at this point have sufficient capacity for enrolled students. Any other comments on capacity, district?
I think we would agree with that.
Okay. Charter schools, you don't have one, so we can skip that. Condition as building ages, obviously you're doing preventive routine maintenance throughout the history of a building. Major maintenance is important. Thankfully, several years ago, 2 years ago now or something like that, the legislature eliminated the 7-year phase-in, which was a blessing for school districts. If they had new buildings, they could get major maintenance year 1 and start saving and using that major maintenance for those buildings as they age. But at any rate, major maintenance is used. There comes a point in the lifespan of any building that when it gets a certain amount of deferred maintenance, you have to have an infusion of capital funds, which is, I think, one of the school district's concerns, not yours in particular, but all school districts. And that is that obviously you guys want sufficient monies as you see fit to provide for capital needs and stuff like that. So that's just something that is being worked on through the legislature and prioritized. At any rate, FCI stands for Facility Condition Index. This year I put in how those numbers are generated, and that has to do with this list. These FCI lists are actually a direct correlation to deferred maintenance, the percent of deferred maintenance, the amount of deferred maintenance within a building. And the higher on the list, the more deferred maintenance. So this is only page 1 of 450 buildings. You guys do have that Newcastle High School Fitness Center at a 0.35. So you are on that first page out of the 450 buildings. You have one building that's fairly high up there. With regard to ancillary buildings, state law requires that the commission make recommendations, prioritize recommendations for capital funding for education buildings prior to ancillary buildings. We're just telling districts, make sure you take care of your ancillary buildings, because it seems like it's pretty slim pickings for the educational buildings at this point, let alone to reach down and touch ancillary buildings. So major maintenance is an important part of taking care of these at this point, not knowing the future with regard to ancillary capital funding. Your guys, we just pulled yours off individually, and again, we recognize your fitness center is your highest one. It's not a horrible score, but certainly has more deferred maintenance than the other buildings. Any comment on that, Greg?
No, I would agree with you. That's definitely our problem child, and I think it's only going to keep getting worse. I think we're gonna have to probably do some pretty major repairs to that at some point.
Hey Greg, this is Brandon. Didn't we walk that? That's where wasn't it like a shop with a gym in it, or a metal building?
Yeah, it is a metal building, but it's strictly, well, it's I'm gonna say 3/4 of it's fitness center. The other quarter would encompass restrooms and a concession stand.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
that one there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember it. So that's our worst scoring building.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
did they fix the parking lot drainage? Did you fix all the parking lot?
Pardon me?
Did you fix the parking lot?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, last summer it was all of our parking lots were repaired, resealed, and restriped.
Nice. So that fitness is what, a 0.3?
Metal building won't seem roof, it looks like.
But as you guys remember, that fitness center, it's I'm going to call it a glorified pole barn,
Yeah.
and it was probably built back in the day when even pole barns weren't as good as they are now. So yeah, it's definitely showing some needs. I'll put it that way.
Way over there. I can barely see it.
Yeah. I remember it though now.
Yeah. Good.
That's
All right.
part of their base facility, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so ancillary buildings are in really good shape. So I just said your buildings are in relatively good condition. Major maintenance, you guys update your statuses for work orders each year. Thank you for doing that. It's just, again, just a housekeeping, clean, keep the database clean type of activity. Obviously, when we ask districts to come up with a plan and submit each year for major maintenance projects through Bob, and who looks at the and considers each one for approval, and also the fact that, and you guys know this, if something pops up in the middle of the year and you want to submit something, you can do that. State law allows that. We talked about your security balance and the fact that that has, it doesn't have to meet the definition of major maintenance. You guys are going to get about another 30,000, I thought. I could be wrong. No, it must be more than that. Probably, yeah, 30,000 on the second year of the payment. But anyway, you guys will get a little more this year, and after that, we just don't know what's going to happen. You don't have any 8% balance, so we appreciate that. 10%, of course, can be used on teacherages and other buildings that may not necessarily qualify. Pools, scoreboards, you know, those kinds of things. Field lights, which I'm sure you guys are very aware of. Just for illustrative purposes, we always just go back the year before. These are your priorities and major maintenance expenditures from highest to lowest. And then we broke those out per building, per expenditure from highest to lowest as well. Again, you don't need to defend that, just illustrative. If someone wants this facility plan, it would just show last year's priorities. Each year, and Greg, you can probably test this as well if you go to the select committee meetings and stuff, but each year we have individual legislators stand up and say, hey, are these school districts spending money on their lowest scores, their highest needs? And so what we started doing a couple of years ago, several years ago, is we just started putting your lowest score condition scores, 1 and 2s, which are failure and poor. And then we let you guys say, hey, what are you going to do with those? And you can write notes if you want, and then status, or you're going to complete a year or two or whatever, drop down. There's a drop down menu you can choose from. But we let you speak for yourself. And if this, some legislator or someone asks, we just give your facility plan to them and let you speak for yourselves. We're not going to speak on your behalf, other than we in general say that, you know, school districts are very conscientious of their buildings and needs, and prioritize to take care of those needs, and according to decisions made usually by the school board. I don't know.
And I agree, Troy, and I think we've had this discussion every since we've been doing this, that, you know, definitely some of these twos that we're working on addressing. But I'll be perfectly honest, there's some of these twos I'm never going to do because, you know, in efforts to to use our money in the best possible way. It's a waste of time to do some of these twos. And I don't know if you remember, but one of them being when you got precast concrete walls inside of a building and they rate those as a two, it does not make any sense. And there's a few things like that I've got better things to spend our money on than that.
Well, Greg, wouldn't a pretty pink look good with those precast concrete walls?
Yeah, it would, Troy. Why don't you come up and talk to my board about that?
We respect your decisions and prioritization, and thanks for speaking on your behalf.
Well, and I appreciate that. Yeah, because, you know, really, if the legislators are concerned with spending our money in the best possible way, I think they've got to have a little faith in what we're doing. I mean, if they truly believe that, they need to have a little faith in what we're doing.
You know, I know some school districts will maybe once a year, once every other year or something, have their legislators invite them over, give them a lunch, and give them a tour of their buildings. And
I don't think ours even knows where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll just leave that at that.
Yeah. Give them a call, invite them over, give them lunch.
It's happened.
Yep. Next thing is condition assessment. Every 4 years, state statute requires us to go out, get a professional service provider and procure them and have them go out and assess all the buildings on-site. State statute also requires on-site assessments. So can't just do it from corner office. So anyway, that's coming up. We'll be developing the scope this fall, obtaining and getting a service provider to do that. And then the important thing, Greg, and I know you've attended these, and I don't know how much longer you're going to be around. Probably, I hear about 20 more years, aren't you, before you retire?
Do you guys allow drinking in your meetings? Because obviously you're confused.
We are awful close to Colorado.
Oh, there you go. Life is good when you get that southern prevailing wind, huh?
Oh, my word. Wow, we went south on that one. It's important, though, school district, and Greg, again, I don't know how much longer you're going to be there, but before you retire. But at any rate, we do provide a 4-hour training in Casper. It's not going to be on April 1st. We backdated so we know when to start our process, but it'll be in April of next year. We will let school districts know when that is, and we want the best qualified person who knows the buildings the best to come and get 4 hours of training for the condition assessment tool to understand what the tool is, what it's used for, why it's important. And then, you know, we always remind the school districts when they show up on the doorstep to do their assessment. Don't give them the keys and tell them to check them back in at the end of the day. No, walk with them, shadow them the whole time, and help them do a great job, because these assessments are important. And then the last thing I want to say on this, and we've had a little bit of pushback, not often, but every once in a while, school districts say, you know, why do you interrupt our educational environment with these assessors? And we just say, well, we have over 550 buildings. It is not possible to do it in 2.5 months to assess all the buildings and do it in an economically wise way. So we have to dip into the spring just a little before school's out and into the fall. But these assessors are trained not to interrupt the educational environment any more than needed. Any questions on that?
No, and I'm speaking for myself, I guess. I don't think that really affects our district too much. I mean, all the time that I spent with them walking around, they was very open to if there was a class in a room and I recommended that, you know what, in 30 minutes they're going to be out of there. They was pretty helpful in going along with that.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I think I visited, it was years ago when I worked for Laramie too. I think I went down and looked at a school in Colorado. Must have been in the Fort Collins area. And back then, of course, this, you know, before security became a national, you know, obsession, and it's an important topic, but they had all glass walls from the hallways into the classrooms. And it was amazing because you'd walk by those students in that glass hallway, and those students wouldn't even look up and acknowledge you. They were just used to the environment. So it's kind of interesting from district to district and what that looks like.
Well, and you're right. And, you know, and the times we live in now is definitely changing things. You know, 5 years ago, somebody could walk through our schools and you could ask anyone if they seen anyone and they'd say no. But it's kind of funny now that I'll take a contractor or a service person in there and get them to where they need to be and leave them there, and it won't be less than 30 minutes. I'll get a few phone calls that there's a strange guy in there. Is he with the maintenance or what? So they do notice a little more now than they used to, but which is good. But as far as interrupting classes, doing this condition assessment, I don't think that really causes any real heartburns here anyway.
Component projects. Component projects are basically been defined as basically just helping with districts with if they have insufficient major maintenance funds and they don't qualify for a major capital project. It's nice to be able to provide some capital funding for components that may cost a lot of money. I was looking at this number 5 on this list. There were, by the way, 31 submissions this year. Greg, you've been on that prioritization committee multiple times, and whoever does take over for you, it'd probably really be good for him to do that, just to understand the process and how this works. But at any rate, the committee of 12 district representatives prioritize them, 31 for about 39 million. We average maybe 5-6 million a biennium. So if the commission follows through with recommendations according to the prioritization, probably through 4, give or take. But we want school districts to know where they are on this list. You are not on this list. You didn't have any submissions this year. But we want to make sure districts know where they are and they can work their legislators to maybe get down farther if they so desire.
Yeah, and I agree, Troy. And, you know, as far as, and this is a personal choice, for me, I take great pride in knowing that I don't have any component projects, because in a certain amount of way, and it tells me that they're taking care of things before they get component level funding status. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, yep, it sure does. Appreciate you doing that. I just said you guys are continuing to maintain your buildings with available major maintenance funds. And then if you guys ever do want to submit a component project, next time will be available as 2020.
Right, yeah, and I'm not saying there's going to come a point when we probably have to, but yeah, anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, looking through here, yeah, where school districts, where it comes hard is when you have, like right here, you know, and again, I'm not judging this, but exterior walls on your high school, and I'm not looking at the notes, but there are things, roofs and things, HVAC that can run sometimes in the millions, and it's pretty hard sometimes for school districts to come up, save that money. If they have to save that much money up, sometimes it's a negative impact on the rest of their district because they thin those funds out so much. So.
Well, and I agree, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, Troy. As you know, we've discussed several times in our meetings. If you are responsible enough to start saving up money for some of these projects, then you've got some legislators that's looking and saying, well, they aren't even spending the money they've got. You know, so, you know, that saving money is a double-edged sword, I guess, the way I look at it.
Yeah, it is, and I think part of that is educating the legislative body on why that's happening and how.
I agree.
Yeah, Brandon, legislative bill. So just guys, bring you into segue into this. Um, we know that you guys on the education side track bills very closely during the legislative session and have a forum by which to do that, a method. We started doing this last year. Some of these were tracked in your education tracking, but sometimes there are bills that have an effect on you as a school district that may not be seen there, and so Brandon's going to talk about these.
So Greg, you probably heard this, we just went through with the commission, but for everybody else, House Bill 52 is the public works contracts. It deals specifically with FF&E procurement. So if you're going to be doing any purchasing of furniture, fixtures, or equipment, you'd want to work with your local or your architect of record or designer to specify products that are available from Wyoming vendors. House Bill 65 is procurement amendments, and it increased the dollar amounts to present value of today's dollars. One of them is the bonding for school districts. It was a $7,500. It's now $50,000. Hopefully there you can put more locals to work by not having to bond some of those littler projects. A&E procurement, that's up to $50,000. There's a tiered system in there, 0 to 25, select a local, or select an individual. 25 to 50, get quotes. 50 and above is the full-blown procurement. School districts construction went to 50,000 as well. It was at 25,000, so that's an increase. And then advertisement is a minimum of 2 weeks across the board. House Bill 78. Luckily, you don't have a lot of ones out there because not this year, but next year, your payment for major maintenance as well as community colleges will also get this. It's going to go to a quarterly payment process. With coal lease bonuses, House Bill 79 has changed the school finance interfund loans, allowing the legislature to borrow from different accounts. House Bill 152, if you got any civil work going on, your civil engineer or architect will want to look at this one. It increases the penalties from $500 to $5,000. It's about making sure the utilities are located properly in the drawings and increasing the penalties. Senate File 49 is about county zoning authority and private schools, ensuring that they have the same type of facilities as public schools. This one's in particular to one in Jackson or Teton County. Public records, I'm sure you guys get some of those, so that has been changed and would have an effect on the school district, Senate File 57. Another one dealing with professional service procurement is Senate File 74. There's a tiered system in that also, trying to keep a lot of state dollars spent on Wyoming workers. So if you're going to be doing any architectural procurement, that would apply. And then the last one's our appropriations bill. In this session, they appropriated a little over $30 million. Satellite High School was appropriated 17.9. Sheridan 2, they got an alt school, John C. Schiffer for 8.8. There's a rural school, Shawnee Modular. It's a reappropriation of 3 existing modulars. There's some excess money. They reappropriated that to solve a condition on a modular out there. As you guys know, the SFC has some unanticipated funds. Those are specifically pointed to Satellite and John C. Schiffer. What Paul and Bob were talking about is that 4.9, and Greg, this is what we'll be discussing heavily at the May meetings right there. How is that money going to be, in the bill it talks about the commission has to have a policy on it. So that's where you're at. Be good. You'll get a little bit more major maintenance payment. When we ran the calculation, you know, the cost of construction just keeps going up. Ours means number had an increase. So as a result of that, the major maintenance payment was going to go up. That's $1 million throughout all 48 districts. And then we have another charter school lease here in Laramie. So total is $34.2 million. So moving forward, any questions on those bills or anything?
No.
None for me.
All right, so now to the biennial budget request. We always ask the same question every year, but first want to point out rules and regs were updated this year. Nothing really new, just a confirmation of what the commission is requiring of us when we look at proposing budget requests to them. So every building will have 3 scores that will roll up into a composite score. Condition of buildings is 50% weighting of those scores. Buildings capacity is 35%, and then educational suitability is 15%. So we're looking at putting that together and bringing that, I think, in the May meeting as kind of a topic of discussion before formally presenting it at the June meeting. And then the other thing is that I just made an assumption. Let me know if this is correct. I looking at your capacity and your condition, I made a statement that you have no capital request for this next biennial budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then last of all, we always provide unique issues, ideas, concerns. Is there something in this facility plan meeting that has not been discussed or needs to be discussed more fully before we stop district? So is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think everything that that we've noted, yeah, just no, I think we're fine.
Okay, staff, anything from you?
No, it's good talking to you guys though. Look forward to seeing you in May.
You bet.
All right.
Sounds good. And Bob, you're still planning on coming up? Is that next month?
It's coming up. Actually, I've got you on the docket. I believe it's on the 12th. It's coming up here in about a week, 2 weeks.
On the 12th?
I'll look.
Yeah, I've got you for the 11th.
On the 11th, that's right. On the 11th, that's correct.
Okay. Sounds good. No, that should work.
Good.
District, I just want to say thank you to Deb for all the work she's done and what she puts trying to get this prepared for today. So thank you, Deb, for your work.
Thanks for your help.
All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Thank you, district. We look forward to seeing you in person in the future.
Okay. Thanks. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.